At long last, the Lone Star Showdown is officially upon us. The Texas Longhorns will go into enemy territory, Kyle Field, to take on the Aggies. Helping us break it all down from the Texas perspective, good friend of mine, Brad Kellner of Texas Sports Unfiltered, joins the show once again. BK, appreciate you taking the time, man. It is a pleasure to have you on, and really excited, man, to have you on this week specifically, a week that essentially has been 13 years in the making.
SCP, it's been a long time coming, and we just passed the 13th anniversary of the Justin Tucker walk-off field goal in College Station to end the last meeting between Texas and Texas A&M. So it's been way too long. You know, it's one of the worst parts of conference realignment, the fact that you lose some of these rivalry games. But one of the best parts, if not the best part of Texas joining the SEC, is the fact that the Longhorns and Aggies will get to duke it out every single year once again. So fans on both sides can't wait. Obviously, so much on the line in this matchup. It's going to be a lot of fun to break it all down with you here, man.
Yeah, and BK, I want to get into the game, the matchup, the rivalry specifically. But first things first, I do want to talk about, again, Texas to this point. You think about what's on the line, and I don't want to overemphasize that, BK, too much, because the beauty of rivalry weekend, and especially a rivalry like this, it doesn't need to be for a spot in a title game or a playoff or a trophy. Like, this one means everything, no matter what the stakes are. But when you look at Texas right now, sitting at 10-1, 6-1 in conference play, still ranked obviously in the top 5 at number 3. The latest college playoff rankings, when they come out, Texas will probably still be in that 2 spot, the 2 overall seed. Just thoughts on where Texas sits right now. There's some people that want to try to poke holes in the resume, and I know Texas fans, and I've even low-key, BK, defended Texas's honor, because it seems like every single week on the ranking show, we got somebody on the panel trying to take a swing at the Horns for what's their best win or who have they played. And, listen, the bottom line is this. You had that one rough night against Georgia, but Texas, winners of 4 straight, and 10 of 11, obviously, has handled their business when they needed to, coming off that 31-14 win over Kentucky. So just where do you sit right now? 1 week left to go. I mean, we know who this team is, but just kind of thoughts and feelings right now with where Texas is and what's on the line this upcoming weekend in College Station.
Well, I think Texas is in a great spot, right? Like, it doesn't matter what Joey Galloway and Greg McElroy and Booger McFarland have to say about the Longhorns, and it doesn't matter what people on Twitter have to say about the Longhorns. All that matters is what the committee thinks, and the committee clearly likes Texas, right? I mean, for weeks now, they have had Texas as the highest-ranked team in the SEC and at that number 2 seed in the country, which, like you said, I think they'll be there again in this week's CFP ranking. So the committee clearly thinks higher of Texas than the internet does. And I think the Longhorns are in a great spot. Now, look, even bringing this up makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. Like, Texas, I think, could lose to Texas A&M this weekend and still make it to the college football playoff. Now, if we were talking last week when Alabama had 2 losses and Ole Miss had 2 losses, I would say, probably not. And Texas probably wouldn't deserve to make the CFP if they were 10-2 with their only losses coming against Georgia and Texas A&M. But in terms of where they are from the committee standpoint, I think Texas is looking very, very good. And the fact that, Chris, I mean, Texas is in sole possession of first place in year 1 in the SEC. Like, I don't care that they haven't played the best teams in this conference this year for years. Right before the announcement came down that Texas and Oklahoma were coming here, people were like, oh, you're lucky you play in the Big 12. Like, you couldn't hang in the SEC. And obviously in 2021, the news breaks that those 2 schools are coming. And it's enjoy your time in the Big 12, because when you get here, it's just different. It's a gauntlet. Every team can beat you. Even the bad teams are good enough to win. And it's like, what has Texas done? They've beaten everybody. And it's like, well, everyone's dunking on these teams that Texas is beating. I just saw Florida beat LSU and Ole Miss in back-to-back weeks. Texas beat them by 32. Texas beat Oklahoma by 31. I just saw them beat Alabama by 3 touchdowns. Vanderbilt beat Alabama. Texas went in there and won. Kentucky played Georgia to a 1-point game, and they beat Ole Miss. Texas beat Kentucky by 3 scores this past weekend. So I'm giving you a lot here. In the eyes of the committee, Texas is in a great spot. I think they're fine regardless of what happens this weekend. But, it's like, I don't know, man. The haters, there's a lot of goalpost moving, I should say, right now. And it's not just with Texas. It's with teams all over the country. But the Longhorns have exceeded my expectations. I think exceeded just about everybody's expectations with what they've done in year 1. And obviously, if they could find a win this weekend and go into Atlanta as the number 1 team in the SEC championship game, That's pretty damn special to do in year one in the toughest conference in the sport.
BK, I want to spend the majority of this conversation focused on the Lone Star Showdown and this rivalry. Again, 13 years in the making, 13 years since we've had this game, which was a travesty in its own right. But finally, once again, Texas and Texas A&M will do battle on the gridiron when the Longhorns go to College Station this weekend. First, BK, I just want to ask, again, you grew up with this rivalry. What does it mean to you? Because, I can talk about it, obviously, and I've been around great rivalries, but I know this one hits a little bit different, obviously. I mean, again, it's a game in which you don't need playoff implications, SEC title implications, any trophies on the line. This is one that, again, just from the folks I've talked to, the hatred is very, very real on both sides. There's a lot of bad blood for things on the field, off the field. This spans, BK, to different sports, right? We were talking over the weekend about the baseball aspect and the way that plays into things. But for you specifically, BK, growing up with this rivalry, when you think about the Lone Star Showdown, what comes to mind?
I mean, Thanksgiving is what comes to mind, honestly. And I think it's a minor travesty that this game is not happening this Thursday. And I hope that over time that, Texas and Texas A&M agree to play this game on Turkey Day again. Now, I'm glad it's the last game of the year. It's Thanksgiving weekend. It's still going to mean just as much. But, for me, growing up, I like 90% of my family. They were Longhorns. 10% were Aggies. I don't like them very much. But there are so many houses that were divided, and mine was included too. Like, my parents always host Thanksgiving, and it was like we did lunch, but people would stay through dinner to watch that game at night. So it's like I think of Thanksgiving and everybody getting together, and I know that's the story with so many families across the Lone Star State, where you've got half the people who went to Texas or root for Texas, half the people who went to A&M or root for Texas A&M in the same house. So I think you'll still get that because it's Thanksgiving weekend. A lot of families are together. But it's just, man, it means so much to so many people across this state. And I'm glad that it's back. And I also think of, 76, 37, and 5. And that's Texas's all-time record against Texas A&M. So I think of Texas winning this game way more often than not. And, Texas has dominated this rivalry over the years. So hoping that picks up again this weekend. But really, it's such a big deal for so many people once again in this great state of Texas. And it's going to be a lot of fun getting this every single year. And of course, not just in football, right? We're going to get it twice in basketball. We're going to get it in baseball, obviously with the Jim Schlossnagle situation. I mean, that thing's just been up to 11. So it's a big deal to the state of Texas. And I think the rest of the country, Chris, is going to realize that this is one of the biggest rivalries in college sports. I mean, I keep talking about the Lone Star State and what it means to people here, but I don't think it's going to take the rest of the country long to realize, no, we shouldn't just talk about this as a regional rivalry. This is one of the biggest rivalries we have in all of college sports. And I think ticket prices show that. And I think what we're going to see at Kyle Field on Saturday night with you in attendance is going to show that as well.
BK, do you wish the game was still being played on Thanksgiving? Is that something? Again, the game is back, but I've heard a lot of people that it's a crime that we don't have it on Thanksgiving.
Yeah, look, I'll take it existing over nothing, but I do think it's a crime that it's not on Turkey Day, and we'll see. Once again, I don't know the process to get that to happen, right? I don't think there's any SEC games. I don't know if there are any college football games on Thanksgiving.
I think we've got
this year.
Tulsa and Memphis or something like that, but no SEC games yet. The Egg Bowl is typically on Thanksgiving as well, and I think the SEC is kind of, unfortunately, giving way to the NFL for Turkey Day. So 2 Black Friday games and then the rest on Saturday. So
you said Tulsa, Memphis?
I think something like that. It's Memphis and somebody. Yeah.
Again, no college football games on Turkey Day this year. So, I hope the NFL's king, and the NFL now plays 3 games, right? It used to just be 2. Now they've added that nightcap spot. So I guess I see what college football is doing, trying to not go against the big bad NFL. But I think Texas A&M would do just as good, if not better than. We've got Dolphins, Packers.
They're going to outdraw the Cowboys, right? Come on.
I don't know about that. This version of the Cowboys, yes. It's like the Dolphins Packers is the Thursday night game this year for Thanksgiving, and I think Texas A&M would do better than that. So, I would love for it once again to go back on Turkey Day, but I'll take that it's being played over anything else because 13 years is too much time to elapse for a game like this to go down.
All right, BK, I want you to stop being so nice to the Aggies because I want to ask you about the rivalry specifically. And this is what I've been told, and I've talked to you about it, talked to others. When it comes to the Red River Shootout, there is this hatred, but there's like almost this mutual respect between the two. When it comes to Texas A&M, it is a very much big brother, little brother kind of vibe where it's like I've been told A&M hates Texas more than Texas hates Texas A&M because again of this big brother, little brother vibe. My question, BK, is simply: is that accurate? Is Texas A&M the little brother in the state?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt about that, right? I mean, just look at the history. Like, if you would ask, obviously, if you ask a Texas fan, they're going to say yes. If you ask an A&M fan, they're going to say no. But if you ask a neutral third party and you just like, hey, here's the resume of what Texas has done, not just in football, but in all sports, and here's what Texas A&M has done, not just in football, but in all sports, it'd be like, oh, yeah, no, that feels pretty big brother, little brother right there. And then if you look at like the scores, I already brought up the football rivalry score. But if you look at basketball, you look at baseball, you look at most of the sports, like Texas has dominated Texas A&M over the years. So, yeah, it's big bro, little bro. Every Longhorn fan looks at that. But once again, just random college football fan should feel that way. If they don't, go join the cult, I guess, in College Station. Go do that. But now this is it's they're little bro. They always have been, and they always will be. CP.
BK, looking at the game specifically, the matchup, obviously Texas A&M coming off that heartbreaking loss to Auburn, 4 overtimes. And we talked about this before, you and I, BK. What's crazy is everything is still on the line for them and on the line for both sides. But when you look at Texas A&M specifically, I think they've actually had a pretty good year in year one of Mike Elko, all things considered. I mean, I had pretty conservative expectations coming in. But when you look at them specifically, what do you make of the Aggies coming in this matchup? Things that maybe matchups where you felt like Texas can exploit Texas A&M. Maybe there's some areas you look at A&M and say, hey, they're really strong here. That could give the Longhorns some problems.
Yeah, and look, I'll say one more thing about the Texas A&M, sort of the feelings towards each other. Look, Longhorns and Aggies have a lot in common. All right, both Texas grads and A&M grads both applied to UT. It's just only some of them got in. Okay, so I'll be nice there. Yeah, look, A&M's defense is salty. I know they didn't show it against Auburn. That was the trappiest trap game that's ever trapped, Chris. And it didn't help that Mike Elko, during his press conference last week, was like, all of our attention is on Auburn. I mean, that was probably circulating through the Auburn locker room. And hell, they should have put that thing on the Jumbotron before, during, and after the game, because that's all the motivation Auburn needed right there to get that win. So I think A&M's been prepared for this for a long time. And look, I don't think this is unique to the Lone Star Showdown. When you're a coach, when you're a quarterback, when you're an important figure in college football, a lot of your legacy is defined by what you do in rivalry games. So it's inevitable that teams are going to be like, we've got 11 other games this season, but this is sort of our biggest game. We've got to be doing stuff to make sure that we're prepared for this matchup right here. A&M's defense is really good. Mike Elko is one of the best defensive minds in the sport. You got the Shamars, you got Nick Scordon, the transfer, who's been one of the best players overall in the SEC, hell, one of the best players in college football this season. Like, that's obviously going to be a test. Now, Texas's offensive line is very good. They're coming off of, I think, their most complete performance of the year against Kentucky. I mean, Kentucky's got some dudes on its defensive front, as you know very well, and the Longhorns were able to run it for 250 plus in that game last weekend. Quinn Ewers got banged up. Hell, Texas had a 15-play drive in the fourth quarter to ice the game where they literally ran it on every single play, and Kentucky still couldn't stop it. So Texas's offensive line has been a little up and down, but they are experienced. That's going to be a fun matchup going up against A&M's defensive front. And then I guess the one thing that scares me is, like, how healthy is Quinn Ewers, right? Because A&M's defense is good enough to keep a healthy Quinn Ewers Texas offense in check. But if Quinn Ewers is banged up and he is hobbled as he was in the last 2.5 quarters against Kentucky, obviously that's going to make life very difficult for this Texas offense. And A&M's defense, they're not very giving. They're going to be aggressive. Hell, not a shot at A&M, but they're going to be taking some shots at that Quinn Ewers ankle too, just to see how healthy it truly is. So that's the matchup, I guess, that worries me a little bit is, Texas offense that even when Quinn is 100%, that hasn't always been as good as Texas fans hope, going up against a very, very staunch Texas A&M defense. at College Station with a banged up quarterback. That's the one thing that worries me, I would say, more than anything else.
BK, when you look at this game for Texas, key or keys to the game for the Longhorns to go into Kyle Field, the 12th man, raucous environment, and come out with the victory?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, kind of following up on that last answer, right? Like you want to establish the ground game. You don't need 250 to win this game, but I mean, if you could get there, obviously you'll take it. Texas held the ball for 35 minutes against Kentucky. They kind of beat Kentucky at their own game. Now, A&M's a different animal, but if you can establish your ground game, wear down that defense over 4 quarters, take the crowd out of the game. I mean, that's demoralizing, right? A 15-play drive where you're just running it on every single play. Everyone knows what you're doing and you still can't stop it. Like if you're able to run the ball for 4 or 5 yards a clip every single time, then that's going to be pretty demoralizing for that Aggie defense. So I think Texas being able to run the football is going to be key. The obvious stuff, don't turn it over. That's going to be important. And then look, you love to get out to an early lead and take the crowd out of the game, right? Like that's what you would like to do. I mean, that crowd's not going to be quiet, even if Texas is up 21-0 in the first quarter. That crowd's not going to just sit on its hands the rest of the game. They're going to do what they can to help spark their guys and get them back into the game. But if you're able to get off to a good start, lean on your ground game a little bit, and turn this into a slugfest. I think Texas is going to be okay on Saturday night.
BK, like I mentioned, top of conversation, this is not a game that needs any extra juice, right? Whether it be playoffs, titles, rings, trophies, whatever. But the fact of the matter is a trip to Atlanta is on the line. Texas can all but certainly lock up being a college football playoff participant with a win. And maybe most notably of all, BK, they can make sure A&M doesn't go and make sure A&M doesn't go to Atlanta, make sure A&M doesn't go to the playoff. So I simply ask you, what would a Texas win mean? Not just because I don't know that I can think of a much sweeter setup for the Longhorns if you're able to get the victory than being able to secure everything I just mentioned from the Texas perspective, to being able to essentially eliminate A&M from what I just mentioned. And you've got the whole, it's been 13 years since we played you. You've had a 13-year head start on us in the SEC to get right. And we can walk into your building, beat you, and it's right back to you being little brother again. And order has been established, and we're in here running your conference after you got a 13-year head start. There's a lot of different angles in which a Texas win could be really sweet.
That all sounds pretty glorious, doesn't it? I mean, look, I'm one of those Texas fans that I root against my rivals at all costs. And some, it's not a Texas thing, right? Some fan bases are like, oh, I would love for my rival to win every other game that they play. So when we beat them, it like crushes them, right? They're so confident going in, and then we go into their place and beat them, and it just ruins their life. I'm the guy who's like, dude, I want Oklahoma to go 0-11 or 0-12 every year. I want Texas A&M to go 0-12 every year. So, I think I'd prefer A&M to have nothing to play for, but it does add a little cherry on top that, this you can knock A&M out. You can get to the SEC championship game. And going back to what I said earlier, like it's been every SEC fan base that's been like, Texas can't compete in this league. They've got no shot. It's been a lot of A&M fans saying that. And it's sweet because A&M didn't do shit in the Big 12. So it's like they act like, we were so good in that conference, but because we moved to the toughest league in the sport, that's why we're bad. And that's going to happen to you guys too. If Texas is able to, in year one, do something that A&M has never done, and that's play for an SEC championship, that would make it a little sweeter once again. So, yeah, where do I sign, CP? Everything that you just said sounds perfect. Give me a dotted line, and I'm putting pen to paper, baby.
BK, last thing, we'll get you out of here. I know our guy Kyle Umlang has the Aggie Facts books. Or I was just kidding. Is there anything that your favorite Aggie joke, or maybe there is an Aggie fact, or just any fun fact about Texas A&M that you like to use? And I guess it's been a while, obviously 13 years, but anything that you like to needle the Aggie fans with, either when it comes to the joking matter or, facts typically hurt worse than anything. So,
well, it's tough with Aggie jokes because like there are so many of them out there, but the problem is only like 3 of them are actually jokes. All the rest of them are true. So, and for A&M, a lot of times the jokes write themselves, right? Like A&M's been in big spots before. They usually come up very small in big moments like this. So I think some jokes will write themselves this weekend. But now I've got a full list. I won't read them all, but I'll show you right now. I mean, this is for the show on Texas Sports Unfiltered this week. This is just Aggie jokes, and there's going to be a few more added to this thing today as we get set for Saturday night. So, yeah, sometimes the jokes write themselves, and just look at the records, man. Look at the history between these two teams. And I think that tells you everything you need to know. But, man, it's going to be a ton of fun. I'm happy for you that you get to be there. I'm sad for me that I don't get to be there. But it's so good for college football. And, look, both of these teams could be 0-11, and it would still be a big deal. But, obviously, with SEC championships and college football playoff spots on the line, I mean, this is the biggest game of the weekend in college football, one of the biggest games of the season in college football. So it's a really cool thing for both fan bases, for the state, and for the country that this game is back, and that year one of the return of this rivalry just is going to mean more, might I say.
Going to be a lot of fun. Brad Kellner, Texas Sports Unfiltered. And in case you've been living under a rock, we go on Texas Sports Unfiltered every single day for the SEC Unfiltered Hour. Again, BK, in case there's Texas folks out there that are unfamiliar, let everybody know where they can find TSU and find all your great work.
Appreciate that, CP. Yeah, we're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, and we have our own app as well. So you can catch all of our shows live. We're live from 8 to 4 Central Time every single weekday. We do pre- and post-game for Texas football as well. But wherever you get your great SEC Unfiltered content, you can find Texas Sports Unfiltered content as well. And hey, you Aggie fans, we haven't had enough trash talk going on this week. So we need some A&M fans coming into the live chats that we have and coming on our text line, talking some smack, man. Let's spice this thing up. We shouldn't shy away from the hatred and the trash talk before rivalries. This is what makes rivalries so great. So any Aggie fans are invited to come through and talk a little smack and stir it up over these next couple of days. We'd love to have you.
BK, appreciate you taking the time, man. It's always a pleasure, and we'll definitely do it again soon.
You're the man, CP. Appreciate you, brother.